Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh and you're watching AWANI Tonight. The anti-party hopping bill was unanimously passed in Dewan Negara. And is the Independent Police Conduct Commission, IPCC, sufficient to tackle police misconduct? That's coming up. The Dewan Negara unanimously approved the anti-party hopping bill today through a block vote. 52 senators supported the bill, while 7 senators were absent.
According to de facto Law Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, the Prime Minister will issue a letter to each state government imploring them to adopt the law. The bill will be presented to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for his assent before being gazetted. Wan Junaidi previously said the law could be enforced by early September.
The anti-party hopping bill will not apply to senators or members of the Dewan Negara. While tabling the bill for a second reading earlier, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob says the matter was agreed upon by the Special Select Committee after taking several inputs into consideration.
Ahli Dewan Negara dibahagikan kepada 2 kategori, iaitu ahli Dewan Negara yang dilantik oleh Yang di-Pertuan Agong dan ahli Dewan Negara yang dipilih oleh negeri berdasarkan keahlian sebagai ahli Dewan Undangan Negeri yang mewakili parti politik masing-masing. Oleh yang demikian, peruntukan larangan bertukar parti pada peringkat ini tidak terpakai ke atas ahli Dewan Negara, mengambil kira beberapa aspek penting, iaitu isu perundangan ini di peringkat negeri selain daripada memerlukan perundingan dan perkenan daripada Kewah-Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Agong untuk ahli Dewan Negara yang dilantik oleh Yang di-Pertuan Agong.
Ismail Sabri adds that all senators and other stakeholders will be provided with an explanation through an engagement session first, before the amendment to the Constitution on party hopping is made for members of the Dewan Negara. On July 28th, the anti-hopping bill was passed by the Dewan Rakyat after receiving 2/3 majority support from the members through a block vote.
The Election Commission is ready to hold the 15th general election anytime Parliament is dissolved. Its chairman, Tan Sri Abdul Ghani Saleh, estimates the next national polls to cost 1 billion ringgit, with 21.1 million eligible voters.
He told Utusan Malaysia the 1 billion ringgit covers logistics, information and communications technology, hardware and system requirements, human resources management, as well as training for officers. Meanwhile, preparations include identifying polling stations, candidate nomination centres and election officers. Abdul Ghani added that after Undi 18 and automatic voter registration came into effect last year, a total of 5.7 million voters have been registered.
The first group of workers from Bangladesh have arrived, following a deal signed with the country last December. According to Human Resources Minister Datuk Sri M. Saravanan, they will be employed in the manufacturing sector.
Saravanan expects workers from Bangladesh to arrive in Malaysia in stages beginning today. He added that the Bangladesh High Commission has attested the applications of 80 local employers involved in the recruitment of 6,000 Bangladeshi workers. Last December, the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding on the recruitment of Bangladeshi workers to Malaysia. The MOU is effective for 5 years until December 2026.
Meanwhile, unemployment in the country has dipped to 3.8% in June, its lowest since the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak 2 years ago. Economic Minister Datuk Sri Mustafa Mohamad said unemployment rate was forecast to drop to 3.4%, with consistent decrease in the unemployment rate being a long-term trend.
The number of unemployed has dropped to 630,600 in June compared to 637,700 in May this year. Mustafa said the nation has achieved full employment since April. Based on the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD), this is when unemployment rate is below 4%. Meanwhile, Mustafa said the labour force was also strengthened in all sectors except for the mining and quarrying sectors. The increase in workforce was spurred by the service sectors, namely food and beverage, wholesale and retail trade, administration and support services sectors.
The COVID-19 wave in Malaysia due to the transmission of the Omicron BA.5 subvariant is small and under control. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said, however, the new wave will be prolonged as cases rise steadily but slowly in recent weeks.
Khairi also urged the public to report their COVID-19 self-test results on the MySejahtera application. He added that while testing protocols have been relaxed as Malaysia is transitioning into endemicity, reporting a positive test result on MySejahtera is still required by law. He said the issue of under-reporting is quite common and is happening all over the world. However, reporting COVID-19 self-test result would make it easier for the Health Ministry to gauge the current COVID-19 situation, even though the more important figures to focus on are hospitalization and death rates.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Suatu hari nanti, anda pasti ada idea.
Saya ada idea yang merubah segalanya.
Kamilah PUNB dan kami sentiasa bersama untuk membantu perniagaan anda berkembang maju. Nampak tak? Bukan setakat menyediakan pembiayaan. Kami juga memberi anda kepakaran untuk mengembangkan perniagaan anda. Pengubahsuaian, inovasi produk, pemasaran, penjualan, pengedaran, peraukanan dan seterusnya, penguasaan global.
Bagusnya.
Inilah PUNB.
COVID-19 memperlihatkan kepada kita betapa pantasnya adaptasi teknologi di kalangan PKS kita. Niaga AWANI dan Unified Business akan menyelami perjalanan kebangkitan semula PKS kita melalui segmen Jiwa SME setiap Selasa dan Khamis untuk inspirasi anda.
Transformasikan perniagaan dengan Unified Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang dan jimat sehingga 50%. Jom Unified Business.
Welcome back. Touted as the solution to police oversight in the country, the Independent Police Conduct Commission, IPCC, still lacks pivotal powers that allows it to fulfill its intended function. Brian Yap from Amnesty International says this is because of the loopholes in the bill that must be addressed first in order to properly tackle police misconduct.
This task force does not have powers conferred to it by the Criminal Procedure Code, for example. It does not have powers to conduct search and seizures. It does not, if it wants to visit lockups or any sort of places under the police jurisdiction, it has to give advance notice, which we have seen from prior investigations, say by the EAIC on other deaths in custody, that there's often a risk of evidence being tampered and so on. So I think then obviously I think the IPCC also does not have the authority to conduct public hearings, unlike the EAIC, which as it is today. So I think these are some examples of how its lack of investigative powers does not really give much confidence that it will be able to do play its role well, which is supposedly to be an independent police oversight commission. It's neither independent nor does it have the power to really perform any sort of oversight role. And this is not even getting to the point where, to the fact that it does not have disciplinary powers.
According to Brian, the IPCC is in fact weaker than the current mechanism implemented, which is the Enforcement Agency Integrity Commission, EAIC. He weighs in on the important matters to pay close attention to following the passing of the IPCC bill at the Dewan Rakyat stage.
So the EAIC has jurisdiction over all enforcement agencies, including the police. Although I think in the past they have themselves said that most of the majority of their complaints and cases that they handle do have to deal with the police. So the EAIC at the very least has independence. It does not have members of the police force on the commission. The EAIC at the very least has some investigative powers. It has the powers to perform search and seizures and so on, and also compel the provision of evidence and for police to provide cooperation with its investigations. And in the past, I think in the case of Bala Murugan, a very significant custodial death several years back, it did do a good job of investigating, and it found the police culpable and responsible ultimately for this person's death. It also recommended criminal charges be made. So at the very least, it doesn't have the authority to enforce disciplinary action, but at the very least, it has independence and the authority to perform these investigations. Under this IPCC that was recently passed, it has none of these powers.
Brian suggests for the bill to be sent back for review to ensure proper check and balance before its implementation.
This is not a case of NGOs or civil society trying to make the perfect the enemy of the good. This is actually worse than the system that we have today under the EIC. So we hope that the Senate will play its role in sort of a check and balance and review this bill and push it back. But even if that's not the case, if that does not happen, I think what we'll do is we'll look to see what kind of appointments, who is appointed to this commission. As I said, the law does permit the Home Minister and the Prime Minister to appoint former police officers or current police officers even, I think, to be on this commission. We will, hope that's not the case, because that does not mean well. It's not a good sign for its independence. And also, finally, I think we will also obviously be open to engaging with anybody, this new IPCC, as we have been open to engaging with the government in the past, offering our recommendations, our suggestions on how to, make an effective police oversight commission.
Moving on to international news, at least 8 people were killed and 6 others were missing in South Korea as heavy rainfall drenched the Greater Seoul region. The rain began Monday morning, with some areas receiving the highest rate of rainfall in 80 years. Torrential rain knocked out power, triggered landslides and flooded homes and the city's metro system. The southern part of Seoul was deluged in more than 100 millimeters of rain an hour, with rain in some parts of the city reaching 141.5 millimeters an hour, the highest rate since authorities began keeping records. Nearly 800 buildings were damaged, while more than 700 people were forced to evacuate from their homes. Weather officials said the rain is likely to continue over several days. Taiwan held live fire artillery drills in its southeastern coast earlier today amid current heightened tensions with China. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu says the drills are a rehearsal for an invasion of the island in response to China's ongoing military exercises.
China has used the drills in its military playbook to prepare for the invasion of Taiwan. It is conducting large-scale military exercises and missile launches, as well as cyber attacks, disinformation campaign, and economic coercion in an attempt to weaken public morale in Taiwan.
Wu added that China's real intention behind its military exercises was to alter the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and entire region. China launched its largest ever air and sea exercises around Taiwan last week after a visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the highest-ranking American official to visit the island in decades. It has also banned some Taiwanese food imports and cut off dialogue with the U.S. on several issues, including climate change. 3 Palestinians were killed during an Israeli military operation against suspected militants in the West Bank. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, at least 40 others were wounded. The shootout comes a day after a ceasefire ended 3 days of fighting between Israel and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military says that troops came under attack from Palestinians throwing rocks and explosives, and that soldiers responded with gunfire. Israel has conducted near-nightly arrest raids in the West Bank in recent months as part of a crackdown on Palestinian militant groups, in the aftermath of a string of deadly attacks targeting Israelis earlier this year that left 19 dead. Dozens of Palestinians have been killed in clashes with Israeli troops during these arrest raids. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.